Good afternoon, everyone. I think the first thing I should probably do, because I appreciate this isn't an oncology or biomedical conference, is to explain who Cancer Research Technology are. I'm hoping that on the left-hand side you're pretty much aware of the charity Cancer Research UK. And as I understand it, that's currently funding about £5 million worth of research in the Southampton area, about 150 scientists, doctors and nurses. I'm sure Professor Elliott, with his new shiny immunology building next year, will be hoping to up that towards 10 million plus. Now, Cancer Research Technology is a separate company wholly owned by the charity. And we don't just have an aversion for the colour pink, we actually have a specific role, and that's the technology transfer of all the IP or intellectual property or innovation that Cancer Research UK funds and produces through its research. And we are a separate company and therefore can be for-profit, and that for-profit money goes all the way back to the charity to be able to fund more research. And we can gift aid too, thanks to the government, so you can up the money that little bit more. This isn't a new idea. It's been around pretty much as long as I have, 30 plus years. When the charity used to be two charities, there used to be two tech transfer arms. And from that, we are now able to gift aid back to the charity, approximately £20 million a year. And also, separately to that, we set up agreements with pharmaceutical and biotech companies to fund PhDs, postdocs, so research directly into the lab. And that's coming in at about £16 million a year now. And for those who have got someone's head in front of them, we have to peer around, but right at the bottom, we have a very simple vision. We're here advancing discoveries to beat cancer. So we feel we're probably the best go-to people in the UK if you've got an oncology innovation to take it forward. If, as I've proved myself, if it's diabetes, I'm probably not your man. We've had to go to other people who reach out in those situations. So first I wanted to get some of the cliches out of the way, which come up in these sort of talks and have also been mentioned earlier today. So this is from a Cancer Research UK slide. If you fund a bit of lab research, you fund a bit of translational research, fund a little bit of clinical trials, you get patient benefit. So fairly straightforward. And then you have the Valley of Death, which was first mentioned. I think there should be a ticker on this for today as well, by Vince Cable right at the beginning. What I believe here is that fundamentally you have the academics. They're constantly told that to get another grant for their funding, they need to publish. Once they've published, they want to move on to the next thing to be able to get the next grant coming in. So unless what they're doing allows them to be rewarded, why should they try and hop across the bridge to the guys on the other side, who, again, personally I feel is mainly driven for the biotech and pharma by the shareholders. They need to make a profit, and therefore they are risk averse to some extent. If they can't see where they're going to make their money from it, why should they invest? And that reason is, for another cliche which you often see, is the drug discovery process. So I'm talking therapeutics here. You often have 10,000 compounds going in at the very start to one that actually gets approved and goes into patients at the very end. It takes about 10 years. I've heard $1 billion, $1.5 billion used as how much that costs. But I don't see it as quite a nice linear process. Every project I've been involved in has progressed and then gone back again. They've taken it from one patient population, put it into a different one, or realised there were side effects. So actually, as I'll come on to later, some of the best drugs that we have now on the market, which come through CRT, wouldn't have got there if it wasn't for a clinician going, hang on, I think it would work better in this setting. So what was very nice is having a panel before you, is they tell you everything, if any of you were here, it was about what is going to happen in the next 20 years in terms of advancing discoveries. So it allows me to not actually go through all these bullet points at all. If you want to read them, go for it. But there was a lot of talk about the announcement yesterday that Microsoft are going to cure cancer in 10 years by doing a lot of work in the genomic space. Well, as I have up here, it's not just genomics. We have RNA, epigenetics, proteins, metabolites. The more we start to look at things, the more we're starting to uncover and realise that it's actually getting that little bit more complicated. It's not about necessarily the tumour cell itself, it may be what the immune cells are doing when they're coming in. Do we actually need to look at the tumour? Can we take a blood sample? Google have decided they want to have things monitoring what's going on in your blood to be able to work out whether you have a cancer somewhere else in your body. Is it your gut, the microbiome? This is an area which I'm particularly interested in seeing where this will go, but the bacteria there actually indicate or can tell or influence what the cancer is that's in your body. And rather than going through the rest of the points there, I want to go on to one of Cancer Research UK's most recent developments is the Grand Challenge grant. This is a £20 million grant that is designed be given to international teams. So this will be the first time that Cancer Research UK has funded physically put money outside the UK to try and beat cancer. And the concept here is that we have some great scientists here, but there are also a few in the rest of the world, and we're willing to acknowledge that. But if you bring these together and stop them competing against publications, but if you put enough money in front of them, maybe you can get them working together. And what we've also tried to do is make sure that these people will bring in other areas of expertise. So the multidisciplinarity is here. And the picture at the bottom there is of Professor Sahota, also from the University of Southampton. He was one of the 4 shortlisted teams that were on the panel, or went before the panel last Thursday and Friday. I was very fortunate to be sat in the room. I've never been in a room with so many professors, but also knighted people. So there's a large number of sirs and madams in there, which phenomenal what they're able to talk about and discuss. Unfortunately, it's all confidential, and you'll have to wait until at least November to find out who the winner was, but fingers crossed here for Southampton. So, going back to the original question, how does CRT help translate all these ideas into patient benefit? Well, CRT, because I'm up here, I get to put them right at the very centre here. And we've linked into all the Cancer Research UK institutes. We also have linked into the Cancer Research UK centres. The institutes, they fund absolutely everything that goes in within those walls. In the centres, we maybe will fund not only a little bit of research, but we'll give infrastructure support, maybe in imaging, maybe in drug discovery, maybe clinical, to get nurses involved in clinical trials. And then there's also the regular funding of individuals in individual labs all around the country. So it's a little bit how Set Squared has managed to pull together several universities. We've done it on a larger scale in terms of the number of universities, but just within oncology. But we don't stop with Cancer Research UK. On the sides here, you will hopefully see, or at least partially see, some of the other people who we work on behalf of. So Bloodwise and Danish Cancer Society, other charities, both in the UK and abroad, who aren't big enough to have a tech transfer arm of their own, so we've decided that we would help them out. We'll take their best opportunities and try and commercialise them on their behalf. The same with Cancer Therapeutics, CRC, or CTX, over in Australia. They also wanted to get up and started. We helped them. They've now successfully reapplied to the Australian government and are up and running themselves. And then most recently, Alter Innovations from the University of Birmingham have asked us to second a couple of people over to them to look after everything in their cancer portfolio, so above and beyond Cancer Research UK funding. So we're willing to use our expertise to help others where appropriate. With that, we have lots of ideas coming in on this side from the left, coming to CRT, and I think the key thing I want to point out is it isn't, as the cartoon has there, one size fits all. An elephant is a very different opportunity to a snake, but then snakes come in very different sizes as well. So it's a kind of concept that you need to be flexible in how you're going to progress an opportunity. Licensing, fairly straightforward. I've got something that you like it as it is, you pay for it, you move on, just like you would in your shop. Usually a little bit more negotiation than you would in your average Tesco's. But the other areas here I'd like to go into very briefly, if I may. The first one being academic collaborations. As I'm the one on stage, I get to choose one that I was involved in. This was our first venture into Japan with Astellas. They said we are interested in an area of biology, autophagy. We said we have 2 world-leading scientists. We put them in the room together, came up with a scientific work plan. We agreed that we want to go forward, working on target validation in this space. They provided X amount of money to do that, and we're coming to the end of the 2 years now, and there's still a couple of targets we're hoping will go into full drug discovery, hopefully may become a drug in the future. The second opportunity is around lipid metabolism, AstraZeneca. The one point I'll have here is we brought on board someone called Erica Bawaji from Imperial College. Not a biologist per se, not involved specifically within cancer. He is an imaging person. He produces PET tracers. So it gave us a different element or paradigm that we would have from all other collaborations we've done in this space. And finally, when we didn't have a company who wanted to be involved, we set one up. We created a shell company, brought again people in the area, in this case senescence, together, and got them working in a brand new way, bouncing ideas off of each other to generate new ideas, which they wouldn't have done if they were working independently. Now, all of these were generating new drug targets. Cancer Research UK funds drug discovery. They set up 4 units. We've seen so many targets coming out of academic academic centres that we needed somewhere to be able to process them. It's not only small molecules, we also have worked in antibody space. Top picture there is of Professor Martin Glennie at the University of Southampton, who's generating these next generation better antibodies that hopefully will come through into the clinic in the future. And one thing you have to understand is that not everyone is going to be able to generate small molecules, do full drug discovery. So we've partnered with Medimune, part of AstraZeneca, who we show them the better targets that we've found from the research, and they generate the therapeutic antibodies in return for revenue share and milestones later on, which we can then pump back into the charity to fund further research. And one final link that we'll make to Southampton is that we have a CREK biotherapeutics, let's call it the BDU, it's easier that way. So the BDU, which generates all our antibodies, all our vaccines that we want to run in clinical trials, of which the first was the CD40 antibody, which came from Martin Glennie's lab and was run here at Southampton Hospital, not here but down the road at Southampton Hospital. The next opportunity is combining the two. So you take your great scientists with the great ideas, combine them with our drug discovery team, in this case in CRTs, drug discovery labs, and combine them with industry. And I'm hoping there aren't too many people from Merck here, but effectively what we see is that the big pharmaceuticals, they're the big dogs here in terms of they have the strength, they have the power and the money to push through things, but they're nothing if they're not guided. And that's where we are. We're the little dogs who can say, well, you want to work in this area. And if you want to work in this area, here are the key assets that you might need. And this model has worked quite a few times. We've now got 6 companies up there. Merck, the Merck from here, started with us on one project. And then we moved into our whole area. Biology didn't work out on that, but they came back again and asked us, did we have anything in a different area of biology we could work together? So you often with these ideas have to start small and then build up bit by bit. And if I hadn't had to submit my slides earlier, the DDR Nuco down there is actually being press released today. This is a slightly different concept where, in fact, a venture capitalist came to us and said, we like this model, and we will pay you to do the work, but you can then use the other work rather than a big pharmaceutical company, you can work with CROs to get that bit of work done, and then hopefully they will then sell it on to a big pharmaceutical company in the long run. So again, adapting the model to whatever is out there at the time. Now, even if you get that far, doing drug discovery, we found that wasn't enough for some companies. They've still found certain projects too risky. So this is sort of another valley of death in the middle here between late-stage drug discovery and actually getting it into man. So what CRT did is they joined up with the European Investment Fund, which is not affected by Brexit whatsoever, which is quite useful, and also 6 Element Capital to run the fund. And this is a £50 million fund, of which 25 million is leveraged from the European Investment Fund here, with a remit of please just spend it effectively is what I had the feedback. And the idea is that we can fund projects to the tune of £2 to £7 million to get them into patients on our own, and then hopefully that will have been de-risked enough to allow other biotechs and pharma to take them into later stage trials. We've had 5 deals to date, of which the first clinical trial we're hoping will come through soon. Startup companies. There's a number out there which I've been speaking to. We also do startup companies where it is right. Again, not going to go through everything on there, but just to say that we've found the last couple of years, we usually do 1 a year. The last couple of years we've had 3, 4, 5. Again, on Monday we press released one on gamma delta T cells. And the reason I want to mention this is because there is an element of being in the right place at the right time. So in oncology, there's a big focus on immuno-oncology at the moment. If you can put that in your pitch, you're almost guaranteed to get funded, it seems, at the moment. You don't have to have as much intellectual property behind you as you used to. Or for some of these companies, we needed a huge amount behind. That one we didn't. Because we had a stellar scientist and we had an idea, we combined them together and people were almost biting our hand off getting that. Other ones, not so simple. So there is a degree of luck on how you can progress these things. And one other one I will just mention is the chimeric therapeutics, the one which doesn't have a logo up the top there. That has actually been linked up with one of the government's catapult schemes, which Vince Cable mentioned earlier. Again, that was a project that we were struggling to license individually, but in the immunotherapy space, suddenly has taken off at a dramatic rate and has been able to help the program in general. So that's all the startup companies, but behind this is something which I don't often hear about or from other companies, is the key account systems. That's the idea of one person from our side has a really good link with someone in industry who we are going to be able to partner with going forward. And they now, by setting this up, they understand what we're about, what kind of opportunities we have, but we also understand what they're looking for, so we don't bombard them with stuff they're not interested in. So through that, we build up a level of trust and understanding. And it's one of the sad things about being in the UK is that actually the majority of the oncology R&D happens over in the States. So we have someone based, Andrea, the picture there, is based over in the States to make sure that we have these interactions going as strongly as possible. And I myself look after a couple of ones that are based in the UK. So of the couple here, Johnson & Johnson have set up an innovation centre, not just for oncology, but for all areas. They're based on Oxford Street. They say just off Oxford Street, but they're clearly there for the shopping. Merck Shop Dome are just up the road at King's Cross, St Pancras. And Sanofi have headquartered their innovation hub in London for the rest of Europe. So there are a few that are working over here, including the other Merck, I should say. I don't personally look after them. They don't have anything in the oncology space that we speak to here in the UK, but they are over obviously in Germany. So rather than farming it all over to America, we look after them. And then CDP is one last example of what happens if you don't have the best idea, but someone else has had it and you know how to use it better, I think the best way. So there's a scary number of drugs that companies shelve, be it for strategic reasons, or they don't have enough money to push forward anything other than their first asset. But we have clinicians in this country who say, well, that drug in this patient population we think would be amazing. So in that case, we are willing to fund the first stage clinical trial with that drug, and then we show the data back to the company, and if they like it, they say it's de-risked, they can take it further forward. If they don't like it, then we get to take it on. So we've done 12 deals to date on that, and Imatics were the first to get all the way through the clinical trial. They did like the data, and they've taken it on, and it's now in their phase 2 trial. GSK were the second. When they came through, it still wasn't a priority for them. So we have been able to go out and license this to another company. So we're at least being able to see the progress. It may have only got into a few patients now, but hopefully these things will get into greater numbers in the future. Now these have led to 12 clinical trials that are ongoing, but I've been waffling on that we have this great way of doing things. Does it actually pay off? Well, in my mind, yes. This is our clinical portfolio. As at the moment, you'll see there are 4 drugs at the top which are currently on the market. Timodal or temozolomide is still probably the only treatment that you can really give patients who have glioblastoma or brain cancer. Zytiga or abiraterone is a relatively new on the market drug in prostate cancer. All of these have progressed through with, at some point, Cancer Research UK's funding or CRT's help in developing them. And we're hopeful that this pipeline below will continue to move up over time. Now it's not only therapeutics, I also notice there's a large number of devices and software out there. And I think it's fair to say that at CRT we don't see a huge number of these. So this is an area where we would go out and maybe find consultants to help us to understand how, in this case maybe, you get to the approval process of this application. So the middle one, for example, is our high intensity frequency ultrasound device. So something that you could literally burn out tumours within your liver. Or on the right hand side is a urine filtration device, which the first model admittedly split and urine went everywhere, but with working with a company who could make up these sorts of things, managed to get a section that worked. And these are the examples of different things we can do, but it's also important to remember the small things. And in this case it was the reagents. We realised that a large number of scientists produce reagents and then shove them in the back of their freezer and don't think any more of them. We thought, well actually maybe the wider community could use these things again and therefore generate greater knowledge or understanding. These things probably only cost a couple of £100 to make, so a couple of £100 to sell to them, but these numbers mount up. What we also realised is that it wasn't just the cancer community that was struggling with this, it was all research communities. That's why I have the line through cancer, and it's not called CRT reagents, it's called Zimbio, is that we actually set up a completely separate entity which is now helping commercialise through people like Merck, Millipore, all these thousands of agents now. And that's brought in about £19 million since it started up in 2002, and getting close to £3 million gross each year. So, having gone through all those different things that CRT is up to, just final slide on summing up, I think some of the key factors I'd like to make to you is that obviously innovation doesn't stand still, so what you do in your business needs to adapt. And to be able to do that, you need to have multiple approaches. It isn't a one case of one size fits all, or this worked before, so apply it here. Think about who you're working with, what their needs are, what they're saying to you, listen to them, because that's the key thing here. You're working with people, and building that relationship with that person is going to be different to working with somebody else. And even within a company, if your champion leaves, you've got to find another champion, or an venture capitalist if you're a small company, to help take you through. And one thing that we're constantly realising is we know certain things. We know a fair amount about small molecule drug discovery, but in the areas of something like software or biomarkers, we need to assess our competencies. Also, where we're reaching out to these key account people, I think I would say it's probably only in the last 4 months that we've really decided that we're going to have a push into China. The research and development has been getting closer and closer to early stage, and finally we're now starting to see traction of some of our opportunities with them. So now we're working out how best to go in there. But we've been looking at whether we should go into China for the last 3-4 years. So it's been just checking, is there something that we're missing out on? And finally I want to show this quick comment about what sort of sums up being at events like this. It's very important that you actually broaden your horizons as best as you can. What we've learned in the biology space is lovely, but without talking to the physicists, the engineers, the bioinformaticians, the statisticians, the large number of breakthroughs that have happened in this space over the last 5-10 years just wouldn't have happened. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for listening, and happy to take any questions at the moment.